Now, very often when working with if statements, you don't just have code that should be executed when a certain condition is met, but you also have code that should explicitly be executed if the condition is not met. Now, adding such code after the if statement will not do the trick, because this code is always executed as you learned, no matter if this condition was met or not. So if you have code that should explicitly only be executed if this condition is not met, there also is an addition to the if statement that's useful, and it's an addition which you also find in basically all programming languages. You can add the else keyword here, and then again add a pair of opening and closing curly braces thereafter. The code between those curly braces will now only execute if this condition here is not met. So here we could then output another message where we maybe say, sorry, you're not old enough. Something like that. And now with this, if we save this code and we run it, then if I enter a value smaller than 18, we see this alternative message. And of course, if I enter a value greater than 18, then we get that other message. So now we also have a way of running some code explicitly if that first condition is not met. Now, it's also not uncommon that you might have multiple conditions that you want to check, and you want to execute different pieces of code based on which condition was met. At the moment, we check if the user is at least 18 years old, and we also have this else condition. But maybe we want to check if the user is at least 30 years old, and then output a specific message, like you're eligible for our senior jobs, whatever, something like that. And we still want to have that else message, but only if the user is not older than 18. But here we're checking for 30. So now we might want to add another branch where we check if the user is at least 18, even if he or she is not older than 30. Because if we didn't make it in there, that doesn't automatically mean that the user is not at least 18. For such scenarios, we can add a else if branch to our if statement. Again, with curly braces thereafter. However, if you use else if, you now also need to add a brand new condition. And here we could check if user age is at least 18. So now, the way to read this and the way Go will execute this is that Go first of all checks if this condition is met. Is the user age greater or equal than 30? If that's the case, this code here will execute and the rest of this if block will be ignored. No other code from that if statement will execute. This code down there, of course, will. Now, if this first condition is not met, Go will go ahead to the next else if branch in this case and then check this condition. If this condition should be met, the code in there, which we'll add soon, will be executed and the else statement will be ignored. The code down there will always be executed. If this condition here should also not be met, then Go will go ahead to the next else if statement, if there is one, because you can add multiple else if statements to the same if block, or to the else statement otherwise, if it exists, and then execute that code. So that's how that will work, and therefore here in this else if block, I'll also print a new line, and here I'll say, welcome to the club. So what I had before as well. But now we have these different branches with different conditions. And hence, if that code gets saved, and we execute it, if I enter 15, I still get that you're not old enough message. But if I execute this again and I enter 25, I get welcome to the club. So this else if message here. But if I enter a value that's at least 30, then I get you're eligible for our senior jobs. So that message from the main if check. And that's how you gain a lot of flexibility when it comes to working with if statements and executing different pieces of code based on which condition is met.